Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in right now, you already know the federal government is officially shut down as of what, 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time, October 1st, 2025.
Yep, funding gap number 21 in the modern era, and just as we anticipated, really. You gave us that great stack of sources, news updates, government FAQs, economic analyses.
Yeah, CBO reports the works.
Exactly, all focused on this appropriations lapse.
So our mission today, yours and mine, is to, well, cut through the political noise. We need to unpack why this happened, who's immediately feeling the pain, the workers, the agencies.
And crucially for you listening, clarify which government services keep running and which ones, well, stop or face serious disruption right now.
Okay, let's dive in. The core reason seems pretty clear from the sources. Congress just couldn't agree on funding for the 2026 fiscal year.
That's right. No appropriations bills passed, not even a temporary fix, a continuing resolution, or CR. And the Constitution is clear, right? Congress holds the purse strings.
But this wasn't just haggling over small budget lines, was it? The sources paint a picture of a pretty fundamental clash over policy.
Oh, absolutely. It really boiled down to disagreements on federal spending levels, cuts to foreign aid, and maybe the biggest sticking point, those health insurance subsidies.
Let's break down those demands. And just to be clear, we're reporting what the sources say here, not taking sides. So the Republican stance, according to reports,
They were pushing for what they termed a clean CR. Basically, keep funding at the current 2025 levels until, say, late November. Give everyone more time to negotiate the full-year bills without a shutdown.
and they rejected what Democrats wanted to add to that, things they called outrageous policy demands.
Yeah, things like restoring funding for certain public broadcasting, DEI initiatives, climate projects, also eliminating some work requirements in Medicaid.
And the big one, making those Expanded Affordable Care Act, or ACA, subsidies permanent.
Exactly. Because those subsidies, they're set to expire at the end of this year, and that could mean rising costs for, what, 24 million Americans, potentially?
So the Democratic side saw this deadline as kind of maximum leverage. Use the Senate rules, the 60-vote filibuster threat, to lock in those subsidies permanently.
That appears to be the strategy outlined in the materials, yes. They use their leverage.
And it didn't work. The talks just collapsed. Both Republican and Democratic proposals failed key Senate votes.
Right, pretty much along party lines. And that final White House meeting on September 30th, apparently totally unproductive.
And the messaging shifted instantly.
Yeah.
The sources noted things like website changes, blaming opponents, even AI-generated videos mocking the other side.
Yeah, it immediately turned into a blame game. Less about finding a solution, more about controlling the narrative right after the breakdown.
Okay, so the politics failed. Let's pivot to the immediate human cost, the impact on the federal workforce. It's huge.
It's staggering, really. Estimates are around 900,000 federal employees are furloughed. That means they're legally prohibited from working, and crucially, they aren't getting paid.
And that's just part of it. There's another group.
Right, the accepted or essential employees, maybe around 700,000 of them. Think air traffic controllers, TSA agents, Border Patrol, they have to work.
But they don't get paid during the shutdown.
Exactly. They work without pay. I mean, imagine the stress on nearly 2 million people and their families, all stemming from this political deadlock.
Now, there's that law, right? The Government Employee Fair Treatment Act. It guarantees back pay eventually.
It does, yes. Both furloughed and accepted employees will get paid back once the government reopens. But, that doesn't help with rent due now or groceries this week. It's future money.
And the impact isn't even across the board, is it? Some agencies get hit much harder.
That's right. The furlough rates vary wildly. The GSA, the government's landlord, basically, is looking at like a 98% furlough rate. EPA, almost 90%.
Wow.
Even huge departments like Defense are furloughing about 45% of their civilian workforce.
That kind of personnel hit has to affect how the government actually functions. Which brings us to the wider economy. People often say the stock market kind of shrugs off shutdowns.
Yeah, you hear that the S&P 500 might not tank immediately.
But the CBO looked back at the 2018-19 shutdown, the long one, 35 days. They estimated a permanent loss of, what, $3 billion in real GDP? Why permanent?
That's a really key point. It's permanent because some economic activity is just lost forever. Think about federal research grants that get canceled. Maybe a breakthrough is delayed indefinitely.
Or small businesses relying on government contracts that just go under during the shutdown. They don't just restart.
Exactly. And another big factor is talent drain. Highly skilled federal workers might just say, Enough. Find a stable private sector job and leave public service for good. You lose that expertise.
Can't just flip a switch and get that capacity back.
Precisely. And then there's the data blackout. Key economic reports, the monthly jobs numbers from BLS Census Bureau data, they stop coming out.
Which means the Federal Reserve, investors, policymakers, they're sort of flying blind, aren't they? Trying to make decisions without the latest information on inflation or employment.
It just injects a whole lot more uncertainty into the markets and the economy. And uncertainty always carries a cost.
Okay, so let's try to cut through that uncertainty for you, the listener. What actually keeps running and what stops? This is the practical stuff.
Right. The basic rule of thumb seems to be, if a service is funded through mandatory spending, like trust funds or through fees collected, it's generally okay. If it relies on Congress passing new money each year or on new grants being issued, that's where you see problems.
Let's start with the good news, the stable services, Social Security.
Unaffected. Retirement, disability payments, survivor benefits, they continue as normal. Same for veterans benefits, pensions, GI Bill payments, and VA healthcare services keep running. These are funded separately.
Okay, what about health care more broadly, Medicare, Medicaid?
Patients can still see their doctors, claims processing continues, no immediate disruption expected there.
Travel and security. People have flights booked.
TSA agents are working, air traffic controllers are working, customs and border protection officers are on the job. They're deemed essential. Now, you might see delays, maybe longer lines, because the workforce is under stress, working without pay, but the system functions.
And the mail.
U.S. Postal Service is self-funded, so mail delivery continues as usual.
Passports and visas.
Those are largely fee-funded, so passport offices and visa processing should continue. Same for USCIS, the immigration agency. Most of their operations are funded by application fees, so they keep processing applications.
Okay, now for the pain points. Where do things start to break down?
Let's look at nutrition assistance first. SNAP, or food stamps, and WIC benefits, they do continue, but only for a limited time. The sources suggest there's maybe enough funding for about a month.
So if this drags on longer than 30 days, that becomes a serious issue.
A very serious risk, yes. In Head Start programs, which rely on new federal grants being awarded, they often have to halt operations almost immediately.
What about research and regulation? You mentioned the EPA furlough rate.
Right. So the National Institutes of Health, NIH, they delay starting new clinical trials. They can't award new research grants. That slows down medical innovation.
And with EPA staff furloughed.
Efforts like cleaning up contaminated drinking water sites get delayed. FDA food safety inspections become limited. OSHA workplace safety inspections are reduced. The government's capacity to monitor and enforce these critical protections is, well, significantly weakened.
And for businesses, especially small businesses.
The Small Business Administration, the SBA, stops approving new loans. That includes their main programs like 7A, 504 loans, microloans, big hit for businesses needing capital.
And government contractors.
New federal contracts aren't issued. Modifications to existing ones might halt. That means immediate cash flow problems for companies that rely on government work.
Okay, let's drill down on immigration again. You said USCIS mostly runs on fees, but are there specific immigration processes that do stop?
Yes, things funded by annual appropriations, not fees. So the E-Verify system, which employers use to check work authorization, that goes offline. Some specific programs, like the Special Immigrant Religious Worker Program, get suspended.
And what about processes involving the Department of Labor?
That's a big one. The DOL's Office of Foreign Labor Certification, OFLC, apparently ceases all application processing. That includes things like Peer M labor certifications needed for many green cards and labor condition applications, or LCAs, for visas like the H-1B.
So that whole pipeline for certain types of employment-based immigration just stops.
Grinds to a halt, yeah. It's a major administrative blockage for employers and workers in those categories.
And even with travel, you said flights continue, but there can be administrative snags.
Right. We saw in past shutdowns, for example, that appointments for global entry enrollment were canceled. So even if the core security functions remain, the administrative side can get gummed up, causing inconvenience.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What's the final takeaway for, say, an investor looking at all this? If the stock market seems calm,
Well, historically, the market does tend to view these shutdowns more as political noise than economic catastrophe in the short term. The median S&P 500 return during shutdowns is basically zero.
but
But the risk of a prolonged shutdown, combined with that data blackout we talked about, definitely increases uncertainty for bigger investors and institutions.
So what do analysts suggest?
The usual advice in these situations is to look towards more defensive sectors. Things like consumer staples, utilities, maybe traditional safe havens like gold. They tend to weather political gridlock better than, say, high-growth tech stocks.
So the market might ignore the DC drama day to day, but the underlying risk and the real economic damage the CBO points to, that's still a factor.
Absolutely, that uncertainty isn't free. It has real costs that can linger even after the government reopens.
Okay, so recapping this deep dive. The shutdown trigger was this fundamental clash over ACA subsidies versus demands for a clean temporary funding bill and lower spending.
Right, leading to massive furloughs, maybe 900,000 people out of work unpaid, another 700,000 working without pay. Critical research stalls, regulatory oversight weakens.
And a real ticking clock on safety nets like SNAP and WIC if this goes on too long.
While the core service is funded differently, Social Security, VA benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, basic travel security remain stable, thankfully.
But the overall impact ripples out, right? Public health, safety enforcement, the financial stability of nearly 1 million federal workers, plus all the businesses that depend on them or on government contracts. It's significant.
Definitely. It touches a lot more than just the people directly employed by the government.
And, this keeps happening. It raises these big questions about just how we fund the government. People talk about potential fixes like automatic continuing resolutions, auto CRs that would just fund the government automatically if Congress deadlocks.
Yeah, but the counter-argument you hear is that takes away the incentive for Congress to actually negotiate and pass proper budgets. Critics say it could lead to higher spending automatically and weaken Congress's core power of the purse.
So the provocative thought to leave you with as this shutdown unfolds, is there a long-term institutional fix? Something that could actually push lawmakers to pass budgets on time without removing the essential checks and balances built into that funding process? What would that even look like?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Until we find an answer, we'll be here digging into the sources as the situation develops.
Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.